How's it going, guys, and welcome to today's video. It was almost a week ago to the day that all the cows escaped over at the winter pasture, so I thought today would be a good day to run over there, see how they're doing, and see what I've been doing to keep them in the right spot. That's what we're doing today on Farmer Tyler Ranch. But before we head over there, I wanted to get everybody caught up on a few things, the first of which will be obvious to anybody that follows the channel, and that is that the Jubilee is not here in the barn and I'm feeding hay off of the New Holland. While I had the Jubilee in the shop working on the headlights, I did a couple of other maintenance items on it, and I noticed that there was a bunch of water in the oil. Now, I'm really hoping that maybe some water just seeped in through a vent or something like that, because, I mean, the tractor's been out in the rain quite a lot, and I don't really know all those little things about it quite yet. The other option is that maybe the head gasket's blown or maybe the block is cracked, and those are going to be pretty major repairs. So until I figure out what's going on, I'm going to be feeding with the New Holland. I know that some of you were wondering about my homemade protein tub that I was trying out on these girls, so I thought I'd give you a quick update on that. That first batch they went through in about 5 or 6 days, I think it was, which it wasn't bad for the amount of cattle that are in here. So I just filled them up again today, and I'm trying a little bit of a different mixture. In my first tub, I had protein, mineral, salt, and molasses. Now, I was using the salt to sort of limit their intake, and then I started thinking that maybe I had too much salt in there, so I threw some molasses in to sort of balance that out. In this tub, it's just protein and mineral, because I started thinking if you have salt in there and then you're using the molasses to balance out the salt, why don't you just take both of them away and see what you got? And while we're on the topic of my homemade protein tubs, we might be wondering, why do I have 2 store-bought tubs here in the back of the truck? Well, the reason for that is that I still haven't figured out a way with my homemade batch to make it weatherproof. I think if I put that dry mix out the way it is, that once it gets rained on, it'll essentially be ruined. These can take a little bit of rain, so that's why I bought them. These are going over to the winter pasture, but I'm still feeling confident that I can figure out something good enough to use here in the barn where I can keep it dry. My goal of becoming independent off of store-bought protein tubs may not be realistic, at least not over at the winter pasture. I feel confident that I can take care of these girls here, and that'll save me a little bit, so I guess a little bit's going to be good enough. As long as I'm here at the ranch talking about these cows, I figured I'd give you guys an update on the calves as well. Still have all the calves, haven't taken them to auction yet. Of course, you'll see that when it happens. But it's getting late enough into the year, and I still have some hay in the barn. What I'd really like to do is, if I can keep these guys all the way through winter into the spring, and then graze them on this grass for about a month, then take them to market. That would make these calves yearlings at the sale, and hopefully around 7 or maybe even 800 pounds for some of them. And from what I can tell, looking over the markets, that weight range is where you get the most dollars per head. All right, let's load up the truck and head over to the winter pasture. So if you haven't figured it out by now, we're feeding hay at the winter pasture. Now, I'm not convinced that they're actually short on feed and they need this hay, but apparently they're having to look hard enough for feed where they decided that breaking out and getting through the fence was a decent option. So the way I figure it, if feeding a couple bales out there every day keeps them where they're supposed to be, then in my mind, that's money well spent. Now, as for how much I'm giving them, they're each getting 10 pounds a piece per day from me. Now, that's probably around half of their requirements, or a little bit less than half. So there's enough feed out here that they can find the rest on their own. I need to find a good spot to drop this protein tub off, and I think I know right where I want to put it. I'm back out here in the field where I usually leave their salt blocks, and the reason that I leave mineral and protein and kind of all their goodies out here is because this is where they like to lay during the day, and I just try to make it as convenient as I can for them to get these things so they're more apt to consume them. Well, these tubs weigh about 200 pounds, so I don't like to stand on the tailgate at the same time that the tub's on there, because I don't know if you guys have ever had these cables on the tailgate break, but when they do, they usually take the tailgate with them. So we don't want that to happen. And right there, that ought to do it. I got one more job to do while I'm over here, and it has to do with keeping these cows where they're at. But before we go and check on that, I thought I'd give you guys a look at what's in this protein tub. So we're looking at 24% crude protein. And the other things that I like to watch for is just to see that there is copper right there, 45 parts per million, and selenium as well. There's not a ton of copper and selenium in that tub, but that's okay because we've got blocks out here as well. So these tubs are really, the goal here is protein, not mineral supplements, but they do have some of that as well. Whew. All right, so after I catch my breath from climbing up the levee, this is phase 2 of how we're keeping the cows contained. Right there over my shoulder, electric fence. Yes, we are giving up a little bit of feed here on the other side of the levee, but it's not a huge amount. And I know that this fence over here is not great. We got the whole patch the other day that they were breaking out of, but the fact remains that this fence, being on the river side of the levee, it gets, how shall I say, it gets a little bit more abused when the water comes up. The wire's more likely to rust and things like that. So the bottom line is that fence is not as good as the rest of the fences out here on this ranch. So rather than play the game of, you know, catching the cows, patching the holes over and over again, it's a lot easier just string this hot wire up, and while the feed's a little bit scarce, we'll keep them out of here. Probably about March or so, when things really start picking up, we can take this hot wire down and I won't be worried about them trying to leave then. Now, I didn't bring my tester up here, but the needle is saying that we're good and I can hear it, so I think we're all right. Plus the fact that the cows are all still here, that's a good indication as well. You know, I've been wanting a manure spreader for a while, and I've been kind of checking around online to see if I could find a cheap one, all the while forgetting that Max has got an old one sitting out here, and I don't know if this is something that he'd be willing to part with, but this could be a future project on the channel. As far as I can tell, it's fairly light duty. You can tell that it's ground driven, and you know, you can't fit a ton of manure in there, but it looks like all the parts are here, and aside from the tires being in terrible condition, I think everything looks fairly functional. I mean, probably have to free it up and throw some grease in it here and there, but aside from that, well, and a new floor. Aside from those few things, this might be a good little spreader. So a week after the big breakout, everybody is still here and they seem pretty happy and satisfied. So hopefully with a little bit of supplemental feed and that hot wire blocking them out of the place where I know they were escaping, things should go a little bit better from here on out. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys, and I hope I'll see you again on Farmer Tyler Ranch.